Starbound Legend, Part 1. The year was 2387 and the galaxy burned under alien rule. For 2,000 years, the Zephyrian Dominion had swept across the stars like a deadly plague, consuming everything in their path. Their massive crystalline warships moved from system to system, bringing death and slavery to any species that dared to resist. No force in the known galaxy had ever stopped them. No army had ever made them retreat. They were the ultimate predators, and every other race was their prey. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Defiance, staring out at the endless void of space through the main view screen. His ship was humanity's pride, a sleek vessel of advanced technology that represented everything their species had learned about warfare and survival. The Defiance was not the largest ship ever built, but it was the smartest. Every system had been designed for one purpose: to keep humanity alive in a hostile universe. The bridge hummed quietly around him as his crew worked at their stations. Navigator Lisa Carter plotted their course through the Outer Rim territories where humanity had hidden for generations. Chief Engineer Ryan Bell monitored the experimental quantum fold engines that could bend space itself to their will. Tactical Officer Kevin Torres kept watch on the weapon systems that Earth's best scientists had spent decades perfecting. Communications. Specialist Amy Brooks listened to the endless chatter of alien transmissions that painted a picture of fear across the galaxy. Morrison had been born into this hidden world where humans lived in the shadows, afraid to reveal themselves to the greater galactic community. His parents had told him stories of Earth's golden age when humanity first reached for the stars, full of hope and wonder about what they might find. That innocence had died quickly when the first human explorers encountered the Zephyrian war machine. The lucky ones had been killed quickly. The unlucky ones had been taken as slaves to work in the alien mining colonies until they dropped dead from exhaustion. The smart humans had learned to hide. They had retreated to the furthest edges of known space and built their civilization in secret. For 300 years they had watched and waited, developing their technology while the Zephyrians conquered world after world. Earth Command had made it clear that humanity's survival depended on remaining invisible. The aliens were too powerful, too numerous, too advanced for any single species to challenge. Morrison understood the logic, but it ate at his soul. Every day brought new reports of civilizations falling to Zephyrian might. Every week another species joined the growing list of the enslaved and the extinct. How long could humanity hide while the galaxy burned around them? How long could they call themselves human if they refused to help those who suffered? Amy Brooks suddenly looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission. It's not Zephyrian." The language patterns matched the Kalari database entries. Morrison felt his heart skip a beat. The Kalari were one of the few species that had managed to avoid Zephyrian attention through careful diplomacy and isolation. They were peaceful aquatic beings who had never developed military technology, choosing instead to focus on art and science. Their homeworld of Kilos Prime was considered a neutral zone where different species could meet, without fear of conflict. "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The view screen flickered and the desperate face of a Kalari appeared. The alien's blue-green skin was pale with fear and its large dark eyes were filled with tears. When it spoke, the universal translator converted its musical language into words that chilled Morrison's blood. "This is Council Leader Mirthalen of Kilos Prime. We broadcast this message to any who might hear us in our final hours. The Zephyrian war fleet has arrived in our system. They demand our immediate surrender and the enslavement of our population. We have no weapons to defend ourselves. We have no military to protect our children. If there is anyone out there who still believes in justice, please remember us when we are gone." The transmission ended, and silence fell over the bridge. Morrison could feel the eyes of his crew upon him, waiting for his decision. They all knew what Earth Command would order. Maintain radio silence. Do not engage. Preserve humanity at all costs. The Kalari were not their responsibility. Lisa Carter was the first to speak. "Sir, the Kalari system is only 6 hours away at maximum fold speed." Ryan Bell checked his instruments. "All systems are operating at peak efficiency. The new armor plating is holding up well in the field tests." Kevin Torres pulled up tactical displays. "We've run hundreds of simulations against Zephyrian technology. Our weapons should be effective against their hull designs." Amy Brooks monitored the communications channels. "I'm detecting massive fleet movements toward the Kalari system. This isn't just a small raiding force. They're sending everything they have in this sector. Morrison closed his eyes and thought about his orders. Earth Command had been very clear about avoiding contact with hostile forces. Humanity's survival depended on remaining hidden until they were strong enough to defend themselves. Starting a war with the Zephyrian Dominion would be suicide for his species. But he also thought about the Kalari children, who would be torn from their families and sold into slavery. He thought about the artists and scientists who would die in the mining colonies. He thought about what it meant to be human in a universe where evil was allowed to triumph because good beings were too afraid to act. Helm, set course for the Kalari system, Morrison said quietly. Lisa Carter's fingers moved across her controls. Course laid in, sir. Engineering, prepare for maximum fold speed. Ryan Bell nodded grimly. Engines are ready for your order, Captain. Tactical, begin charging all weapon systems. Kevin Torres brought his displays online. Weapons charging, sir. All systems show green. Communications, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we are investigating reports of Zephyrian activity in the Outer Rim. Do not mention the Kalari. Amy Brooks composed the message with shaking hands. Message sent, sir. Morrison looked around at his crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that burned in his own heart. They all knew they were probably flying toward their deaths. They all knew that one ship could not stand against the might of the Zephyrian war machine. But they also knew that some things were more important than survival. Execute fold jump, Morrison commanded. The Defiance disappeared from normal space in a flash of twisted light, racing toward a destiny that would change the course of galactic history. Behind them, the safe shadows of the Outer Rim fell away. Ahead lay the unknown waters of a conflict that would test everything humanity had learned about courage, sacrifice, and what it truly meant to fight for freedom. In 6 hours, they would arrive at Kalos Prime. In 6 hours, they would face the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever known. In 6 hours, Captain Jake Morrison and the crew of the UHS Defiance would discover whether one ship full of determined humans could make a difference in a universe ruled by fear. Starbound Legend, Part 2. The Defiance dropped out of fold space at the edge of the Kalari system, and what Morrison saw through the view screen made his blood run cold. 300 Zephyrian warships hung in space around the beautiful blue-green world of Kalos Prime, like vultures circling a dying animal. Each alien vessel was a masterpiece of crystalline architecture, their hulls gleaming with dark energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. The smallest of these ships was twice the size of the Defiance, and the largest was a massive dreadnought that could have swallowed a small moon. At the center of this terrifying fleet was the flagship of Admiral Vex Corvain, the Eternal Dominion. Morrison had heard whispers of this ship in the intelligence reports that filtered through the underground networks. It was said to be indestructible, a floating fortress that had never been damaged in over 1,000 battles. Its crystalline spires reached out like the claws of some ancient beast in its weapon ports, glowed with enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Amy Brooks was already intercepting the alien communications, and her face grew pale as she translated the signals. Captain, they're broadcasting surrender demands to the planet. Admiral Corvain is giving the Kalari 1 hour to submit to total enslavement or face complete annihilation. Through the tactical displays, Morrison could see streams of civilian transport ships fleeing from Kalos Prime like schools of frightened fish. The Kalari had no military vessels, no defense platforms, no way to protect themselves. Their entire philosophy was built around peace and cooperation, concepts that meant nothing to the Zephyrian war machine. Kevin Torres was studying the enemy fleet formations with the intensity of a predator analyzing its prey. Sir, I'm seeing some interesting patterns here. The Zephyrians are using the same attack formations that appear in our historical databases. They haven't changed their tactics in centuries. Ryan Bell was running deep scans on the alien technology, and his eyes were lighting up with discovery. Captain, these ships are incredible, but they're not perfect. Their dark energy systems are generating massive power signatures, but I'm detecting feedback loops in their containment fields. And look at this, their crystalline hulls are resonating at specific frequencies. If we could match those frequencies with our sonic weapons, Lisa Carter was calculating attack vectors and escape routes with the precision of a computer. Sir, their formation is designed to prevent any ship from reaching the planet, but it has blind spots. If we approach from the polar region and use micro-jumps between their sensor sweeps, We might be able to get close enough to study their weaknesses. Morrison felt a surge of pride in his crew as they worked to find solutions instead of focusing on the impossible odds. This was what made humanity special, their ability to adapt and overcome when faced with superior force. While other species might surrender or flee, humans looked for the angle that nobody else could see. Amy Brooks suddenly straightened in her chair. "Captain, I'm breaking into their communication networks. The Zephyrians use quantum encryption, but it follows predictable mathematical patterns. Give me a few more minutes and I should be able to decode their tactical protocols." The view screen shifted to show the surface of Kelos Prime, where millions of Kalari were gathering in their crystal cities, holding their children close and waiting for death. Morrison could see the fear in their large dark eyes, but also something else, a quiet dignity that refused to be broken even in the face of annihilation. These beings had spent their lives creating beauty and knowledge, and now they would die because they had no weapons to defend themselves. Ryan Bell looked up from his instruments with excitement barely contained in his voice.
"Sir, I figured out how their dark energy systems work."
"They're harvesting power from quantum vacuum fluctuations, but the process creates resonance cascades that build up over time. If we could introduce harmonic interference at just the right frequency, we could cause catastrophic feedback that would overload their entire power grid." Kevin Torres was nodding as he analyzed the tactical implications. "And their formation protocols are completely rigid. Every ship has a specific position and role that never changes. They're like a machine that only knows how to move in predetermined patterns. If we could disrupt their coordination, they wouldn't know how to adapt." Amy Brooks suddenly gasped as information flooded her screens. "I'm in their network. Captain, their entire battle doctrine is based on overwhelming force and intimidation. They've never faced an enemy that uses guerrilla tactics or asymmetric warfare. Every species they've conquered has tried to meet them head-on in conventional battles." Morrison felt pieces of a plan beginning to form in his mind. The Zephyrians were powerful, but they were also predictable. They had conquered the galaxy by using the same methods over and over again, and their success had made them arrogant. They expected their enemies to follow the same patterns that had failed countless times before. Lisa Carter was tracking the movement of Kalari evacuation ships when she noticed something that made her frown. "Sir, the Zephyrians are herding the civilian transports into a specific area. They're not trying to destroy them. They want to capture them alive." The horrible truth hit Morrison like a physical blow. The Zephyrians weren't just conquering Kelos Prime for its resources. They were harvesting its population for the slave markets that fueled their empire. Every Kalari man, woman, and child would be sold to the highest bidder and worked to death in alien mines and factories. Admiral Corvain's voice suddenly boomed across all frequencies, translated into every known language by the ship's computers. His words were filled with the cold arrogance of a being who had never known defeat. "People of Kelos Prime, your hour of grace is ending. Surrender now and serve the Dominion with your lives, or resist and watch your world burn. The choice is yours, but the outcome is inevitable. The Zephyrian Dominion cannot be stopped." Morrison looked around at his crew and saw the same fire in their eyes that burned in his own heart. They had spent their entire lives hiding from bullies like Admiral Corvain, watching from the shadows while innocent beings suffered and died. But humanity had not survived the dangers of the galaxy by backing down from fights that needed to be fought. "Communications. Open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship," Morrison commanded. Amy Brooks's hands trembled as she established the connection. "Channel open, sir." Morrison straightened his shoulders and spoke with the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Admiral Corvain, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Human Ship Defiance. You are trespassing in space claimed by the sovereign territory of humanity. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever as 300 alien warships turned their attention toward the single human vessel that had dared to challenge the might of the Zephyrian Dominion. Starbound Legend, Part 3. The response from Admiral Corvain came as laughter that echoed across the bridge of the Defiance like the sound of breaking glass. When the alien commander finally spoke, his voice carried the amusement of a predator who had just been challenged by an insect. "Humanity? I have never heard of this species. You pilot a single vessel against the might of 300 warships and claim sovereignty over space that belongs to the Dominion. Your courage is admirable, but your intelligence is questionable." Morrison felt his crew tense around him as the Zephyrian admiral continued his mockery. I will give you one opportunity to withdraw from this system and flee back to whatever primitive world spawned you. Refuse, and I will demonstrate why the Zephyrian Dominion has conquered every species foolish enough to oppose us. I'm afraid I can't do that, Morrison replied calmly. These people are under our protection now, and we don't abandon those who need our help. Admiral Corvain's laughter died and his voice turned cold as winter on a dead world. Then you will serve as an example to the Kalari of what happens to those who defy the Dominion. Attack Formation 7. 20 ships forward. Destroy the human vessel, but leave enough debris for the inhabitants of this world to identify. Morrison watched as 20 massive Zephyrian cruisers broke away from the main fleet and moved toward the Defiance in perfect formation. Each ship bristled with weapon ports that glowed with deadly energy, and their crystalline hulls reflected the light of the system's star like mirrors of death. Any sane captain would have surrendered or fled at this moment, but Morrison had not come here to be sane. All stations battle alert, Morrison commanded. Lisa, take us into the asteroid field at coordinates 77 Mark IV. Ryan, charge the quantum fold engines for combat jumps. Kevin, arm all weapons and prepare firing solutions. Amy, jam their targeting systems and disrupt their formation communications. The Defiance leaped forward like a hunting cat, accelerating toward the approaching enemy ships at a speed that made the Zephyrians adjust their attack vectors. But instead of meeting them head-on as they expected, Lisa Carter sent the ship diving toward a nearby asteroid field, where chunks of rock and ice provided cover from long-range sensors. The 20 alien cruisers followed in their rigid formation, confident that their superior numbers and firepower would end this fight quickly. They had used these same tactics against thousands of worlds and had never failed to achieve victory within the first few minutes of combat. But they had never faced an enemy that refused to fight by their rules. Morrison waited until the enemy ships entered the asteroid field before giving his next order. Execute microjump. Target the trailing vessel. The Defiance vanished from normal space for exactly 3 seconds before reappearing directly behind the last Zephyrian cruiser in the formation. Kevin Torres fired a concentrated burst from the ship's modified plasma cannons directly into the alien vessel's engine section, while Ryan Bell activated the sonic weapons that resonated at the frequency of crystalline hulls. The Zephyrian ship shuddered as harmonic vibrations tore through its structure like an earthquake. Cracks appeared along the hull as the crystalline matrix that held the ship together began to fall apart at the molecular level. Within seconds, the massive cruiser broke apart in a shower of glittering fragments that sparkled like deadly snow. The remaining 19 ships immediately changed course to engage the human vessel, but the Defiance was already gone. Lisa Carter had plotted a series of micro-jumps that took them in and out of normal space, faster than the alien targeting computers could track. Each time they appeared, Kevin Torres launched another precision strike against critical systems, while Amy Brooks fed false sensor data to the enemy formation. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to stand still and fight like a civilized species. Every time they locked weapons on the human ship, it vanished and reappeared somewhere else. Every time they tried to surround it, their target slipped through gaps in their formation that should not have existed. Their perfect battle tactics were falling apart against an opponent that made up new rules with every attack. Morrison used the enemy's size against them by luring groups of ships into collision courses with each other. The massive Zephyrian vessels were not designed for close quarters maneuvering, and their rigid formation protocols made them predictable targets. When 2 cruisers tried to catch the Defiance in a crossfire, Lisa Carter led them on a chase that ended with both ships smashing into each other in a spectacular explosion. Admiral Corvain's voice crackled over the communications channel, no longer amused but filled with growing anger. What is this? How does one primitive vessel destroy 4 of my cruisers? All ships abandon formation protocols, surround and destroy the human ship. Amy Brooks looked up from her station with a grin. Sir, I'm intercepting their new orders. They're breaking formation and moving to encircle us, but their coordination is falling apart. Half their ships are receiving conflicting orders. Ryan Bell was monitoring the enemy power signatures, and his eyes widened with excitement. Captain, their dark energy systems are starting to overload. The feedback cascades I predicted are building up in their containment fields. If we can force them to maintain high power output for another 10 minutes, they'll start having catastrophic failures. Morrison nodded and opened the ship's intercom to address his crew. People, we're about to face the full might of the Zephyrian fleet. They're going to throw everything they have at us. And our only advantage is that they don't understand how we fight. Stay sharp, trust your training, and remember that we're not just fighting for ourselves. Every being on that planet is counting on us to prove that bullies can be beaten. The remaining 16 Zephyrian cruisers spread out in a massive sphere around the asteroid field, their weapons charged and ready to reduce anything inside to atoms. But as they moved into position, Admiral Corvain made a decision that would prove to be his first major mistake of the battle. All ships converge on the human vessel. Maximum firepower. I want nothing left but space dust. The alien warships accelerated toward the center of their formation, where the Defiance waited like a spider in its web. Morrison watched them come and felt a cold smile cross his face. The Zephyrians still thought they were fighting a conventional battle against a conventional enemy. They were about to learn that humanity had survived by being anything but conventional. All stations prepare for the storm, Morrison commanded. Let's show them what happens when you pick a fight with the human race. Starbound Legend. Part 4. The 16 remaining Zephyrian cruisers closed in like the jaws of a massive trap, their weapons blazing with enough firepower to melt a small moon. Streams of dark energy and crystalline torpedoes filled the space around the asteroid field, as Admiral Corvain's forces tried to vaporize the single human ship that had already cost him 4 vessels. But the Defiance danced between the deadly beams like a leaf caught in a hurricane, never staying in one place long enough for the alien targeting systems to lock on. Morrison had studied every recorded battle the Zephyrians had ever fought, and he knew their greatest weakness was their inability to adapt. For 2,000 years they had conquered using the same tactics, the same formations, the same predictable strategies. They were like a massive machine that only knew how to move in straight lines. And Morrison was about to teach them the price of inflexibility. Amy, start feeding false targeting data to their fire control systems, Morrison ordered. Make them think we're where we're not. Amy Brooks worked her magic on the alien communication networks, sending ghost signals that confused the Zephyrian sensors. Half the enemy ships began firing at empty space while the other half shot at their own allies. The perfect coordination that had made their fleet so deadly was falling apart as communication systems failed and targeting computers received conflicting information. Kevin Torres took advantage of the chaos to target the ships that were isolated from the main group. His modified plasma cannons had been adjusted to exploit the resonance frequencies that Ryan Bell had discovered, and each hit sent harmonic shockwaves through crystalline hulls that were never designed to handle such stress. One after another, the massive alien warships began to crack and break apart like glass sculptures hit by hammers. Lisa Carter's navigation skills kept them alive as she plotted impossible courses through the deadly crossfire. The quantum fold engines allowed the Defiance to make microjumps that appeared to violate the laws of physics, materializing behind enemy ships for surprise attacks before vanishing again into empty space. The Zephyrians had never faced an opponent that could disappear and reappear at will, and their battle doctrine had no answer for such tactics. Ryan Bell monitored the enemy power signatures and watched with satisfaction as the dark energy systems began to overload exactly as he had predicted. Captain, their containment fields are reaching critical levels. 3 more ships are showing signs of cascade failure in their power cores. Morrison nodded and opened a channel to the Kalari orbital platforms that still orbited their homeworld. During the chaos of battle, Amy Brooks had managed to establish contact with the planetary defense network that the Kalari had dismissed as obsolete against Zephyrian technology. But Morrison had a different perspective on what constituted effective weapons. Council Leader Thalen, this is Captain Morrison. Your orbital platforms may not be able to penetrate Zephyrian shields, but they can provide targeting data for my ship. Work with us and we can turn this battle around. The musical voice of the Kalari leader came through filled with hope and determination. Captain Morrison, our sensors are at your disposal. We may not be warriors, but we will not stand by while you fight alone for our freedom. The combination of human tactics and Kalari sensor data proved devastating to the alien formation. The orbital platforms could track Zephyrian ships through their stealth fields and provide precise coordinates for the Defiance's attacks. What had been a one-sided slaughter was rapidly becoming a coordinated defense that the enemy could not counter. Admiral Corvain's voice cut through the battle chatter, no longer filled with amusement but with growing fury and disbelief. Impossible. No single ship can defeat a Zephyrian battle group. What manner of creatures are these humans? Morrison smiled grimly as he watched another enemy cruiser break apart under concentrated fire. We're the kind of creatures that don't know when to quit, Admiral. You picked the wrong species to threaten. The alien commander's response was to commit his entire remaining fleet to the battle. Over 250 warships began moving toward the combat zone, their weapons charging and their formations tightening. Morrison realized that he had pushed Admiral Corvain past the point of rational thought, and the Zephyrian was now determined to destroy the human ship regardless of the cost. Ryan Bell looked up from his engineering console with excitement barely contained in his voice. Sir, I've been analyzing the captured dark energy signatures from the destroyed ships. I think I can reverse engineer their power systems and integrate them into our own weapons. Give me 10 minutes and I can supercharge our plasma cannons. Amy Brooks had penetrated deeper into the Zephyrian command network and was now feeding false orders directly to individual ship captains. Captain, I'm causing coordination breakdowns throughout their fleet. Half their ships think they're supposed to be in defensive positions while the other half believe they're conducting assault maneuvers. Kevin. Torres was selecting targets from the advancing fleet with the cold precision of a master strategist. Sir, if we can take out their command ship, the rest of the fleet will lose coordination completely. But that means getting close enough to the Eternal Dominion to attack Admiral Corvain directly. Morrison studied the tactical display and felt his blood run cold. The Eternal Dominion was a fortress in space, armed with enough weapons to destroy entire fleets and protected by shields that had never been penetrated. But it was also the nerve center of the Zephyrian formation, and without it the enemy ships would be like a body without a brain. Lisa Carter was already plotting attack vectors toward the massive flagship. Sir, I can get us close to the Eternal Dominion, but we'll have to go through the entire enemy fleet to reach it. Our shields won't hold up under that kind of punishment. Morrison looked around at his crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that had brought them this far. They had already accomplished the impossible by destroying 24 Zephyrian warships with a single vessel, but the real test was still ahead. Admiral Corvain commanded from the most powerful ship ever built, and he was about to throw everything he had at the humans who had dared to challenge his authority. All stations, prepare for full assault, Morrison commanded. We're going to take this fight directly to Admiral Corvain and show him what happens when you threaten innocent people. Ryan, how long until those weapon upgrades are ready? Ryan Bell's fingers flew over his controls as he worked to integrate alien technology with human engineering. 5 more minutes, Captain. But when I'm done, we'll have firepower that can punch through anything the Zephyrians can throw at us. Morrison nodded and turned back to the view screen where the Eternal Dominion waited like a crystalline mountain of death. Then let's go introduce ourselves to the Admiral. It's time he learned that humanity doesn't back down from bullies. Starbound Legend, Part 5. The Eternal Dominion loomed ahead like a crystalline mountain of death as the Defiance raced through the enemy fleet toward Admiral Corvain's flagship. Streams of dark energy and plasma bolts filled the space around the human ship as over 200 Zephyrian vessels tried to stop Morrison's desperate charge. But the modifications that Ryan Bell had made to their weapons were working beyond all expectations, and the Defiance carved through the alien formation like a burning sword. Morrison gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered under repeated hits from enemy fire. Their shields were holding but barely, and he knew they would not survive another direct assault from the massive weapons that Admiral Corvain was bringing to bear. This would be their only chance to end the battle, before the Zephyrian numbers overwhelmed them completely. Amy Brooks was coordinating with the Kalari orbital platforms to provide real-time targeting data, while simultaneously disrupting enemy communications across the entire fleet. Her voice was steady despite the chaos around them as she reported the latest intelligence. Captain, I'm detecting massive power buildups in the Eternal Dominion's main weapon systems. Admiral Corvain is preparing to fire everything he has at us. Kevin Torres locked weapons onto the enemy flagship and waited for Morrison's order to attack. The plasma cannons that Ryan Bell had supercharged with captured Zephyrian technology were operating at power levels that should have been impossible for a ship the size of the Defiance. But human engineering had always excelled at making the impossible work when lives were on the line. Lisa Carter plotted their final approach vector with the precision of a surgeon making a life-saving incision. The quantum fold engines were running beyond their safety limits, but she had calculated a series of micro-jumps that would bring them alongside the Eternal Dominion's hull. where its massive weapons could not target them. It was a maneuver that violated every law of physics and common sense, but it was their only hope of survival. Admiral Corvain's voice boomed across all frequencies as he realized what the humans were attempting. "Foolish creatures, you think your primitive vessel can threaten the most powerful ship ever built? I've conquered 1,000 worlds with this flagship. Your deaths will be a footnote in the history of Zephyrian glory." Morrison felt a cold smile cross his face as he prepared to show the alien commander exactly what human determination could accomplish. "Ryan, transfer all power to forward shields and weapons. Amy, jam their targeting systems for the next 30 seconds. Lisa, execute approach vector 7 on my mark." The Defiant suddenly accelerated directly toward the Eternal Dominion in what appeared to be a suicide run. Every weapon on the massive flagship opened fire at once, filling space with enough destructive energy to vaporize a small fleet. But Lisa Carter had calculated their trajectory perfectly, and the human ship slipped through the deadly barrage like a needle, threading through lightning. Admiral Corvain watched in disbelief as the tiny, human vessel appeared to be flying directly into the concentrated fire of his entire fleet. No ship could survive such punishment, and yet the Defiance continued its impossible charge without wavering. At the last possible moment, the alien commander realized what Morrison was planning, and his blood turned to ice in his veins. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel. Stop them before they reach the hull," Admiral Corvain screamed into his communication system, but it was too late. Lisa Carter executed the most dangerous maneuver of her career, rolling the Defiance through a micro-jump that brought them alongside the Eternal Dominion's hull, where the massive ship's own weapons could not target them without hitting their own vessel. Morrison could see the crystalline surface of the flagship stretching away in all directions like a glittering cliff face of death. "Kevin, target their dark energy core. Everything we have right now," Morrison commanded. Kevin, Torres fired every weapon the Defiance possessed directly into the Eternal Dominion's power core, while Ryan Bell activated the sonic resonance systems that had proven so effective against crystalline hulls. The combined assault sent shockwaves through the massive flagship's structure as harmonic vibrations tore apart the molecular bonds that held the ship together. Admiral Corvain felt his mighty vessel shuddering around him as systems began failing throughout the ship. The dark energy core that had powered his conquest for centuries was going critical, and emergency alarms were screaming warnings of imminent catastrophic failure. For the first time in his long military career, the Zephyrian commander felt the cold touch of fear. The Eternal Dominion began to break apart from the inside out as cascade failures spread through its power grid. The dark energy that had made it invincible was now tearing it apart at the quantum level, and nothing could stop the chain reaction that Morrison's attack had triggered. Admiral Corvain had just enough time to realize that he had been defeated by a single ship crewed by beings he had dismissed as primitive before his flagship exploded in a burst of light that could be seen from the surface of Kalos Prime. The shockwave from the Eternal Dominion's destruction disabled dozens of nearby Zephyrian ships and sent others spinning out of control. Without their command vessel and Admiral Corvain's leadership, the remaining fleet fell into chaos as individual captains tried to decide whether to continue fighting or retreat. Amy Brooks seized the moment to broadcast a message across all frequencies in the universal language of surrender. Morrison stood up from his command chair and looked around at his crew with pride and exhaustion. They had done the impossible and defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy with nothing but courage, intelligence, and the refusal to accept defeat. But more importantly, they had proven that evil could be stopped when good people were willing to fight for what was right. Council Leader Thalan's voice came through the communication system filled with joy and disbelief. "Captain Morrison, our sensors show that the remaining Zephyrian fleet is withdrawing from the system. You have saved our world and our people. How can we ever repay such a debt?" Morrison smiled as he watched the alien warships disappear into fold space, carrying news of their defeat back to the Dominion. "Just remember this day, Council Leader. Remember that freedom is worth fighting for, and that no empire is too powerful to fall when people stand up for what's right." Within hours, news of the impossible victory at Kalos Prime was spreading across the galaxy through every communication network and trade route. The species that had lived in fear of Zephyrian might for 2,000 years suddenly realized that their oppressors could be beaten. Rebellion broke out on 100 worlds as enslaved populations rose up against their masters, inspired by the proof that one ship full of determined humans had provided. Morrison looked out at the stars and knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The age of Zephyrian dominance was ending, and a new era of freedom was about to begin. Humanity had finally stepped out of the shadows to take their place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as liberators who believed that every being deserved the right to choose their own destiny.